I want to present a solution to a series of specific problems that I see at HUD and at the local city and county level. But to do that, I want to lead in so that you have a chance at HUD to respond in detail to anything that you see missing or off in this equation. I also want to acknowledge that this is not a political equation in terms of all the nuanced laws and bureaucracies. It's more of a direct mathematical equation of what someone on the outside might relate to and see as, common sense. This works. And I want to start at the national government level by suggesting that in a democracy, the existence of government is predicated on the basis that it will lead to well-being for the people governed. That if you come to me, or if I come to you and say, hey, I know you're running your family just fine, but I have a plan. I want to govern your family. So what I want you to do is agree to do what I say, to follow the rules that I set, and to give half of your money to me, and I'd like you to vote for that and agree to that. Well, the intelligent answer, if you're not freaked out just by the very notion of anyone telling you what to do, the intelligent answer is, okay, so why should I do that? And if I want to be elected, and I want to stay elected, my answer has got to be that it is better for you. Well, what is better for you? That your well-being goes up as a result of being governed. That you are healthier, wealthier, happier, have safer, there's less fire, etc., that your well-being goes up because you are governed. Now, if I tell you that I'm going to take your time, I'm going to curtail your activities, and I'm going to take your money so that I can better kill you, so that I can get rich, so that I can waste as much time of yours as possible, so that I can ruin your marriage. You're not going to vote for that. In other words, the existence, the underlying contract of every aspect of government in a democracy is the promise that my well-being is going to go up as a result of voting in trust to give government more power, power to write laws, powers to enforce laws, a monopoly on violence, a power to take half of my money, that my well-being is going to go up as a result of that. Now, there is an incredible amount of effusive promising and trust at the beginning of this contract. The snooty arrogance we meet at government help desks, the tired, impatient social workers who have no interest whatsoever in going a minute past 5 to see that some important aspect of our lives is managed, has nothing to do with this promise. You tell a people the candid truth, you give up, 50% of your money, this and that and the other, and here's what you're going to get. It's going to take, 3 years to get a building permit. We're going to ask for this, we're going to ask for that. We're going to tell you you can't build a small house. It's like, what? I can't build a small house? That's what I'm going to get if I vote for government? Yeah, Most of you, a good chunk of you are going to be stressing like hell to afford these houses. That's what you get if you give us half your money and this and that. It's a broken contract when a citizen experiences that the quality of their life is in danger, that their life is in danger as a result of the trust in a democratic system to give authority, to give concentrated power, concentrated money in the hands of a few people on the basis that they have your interest at heart. And what leads to violence, crime, and revolution is when those trusts are broken. When a government says, I know we said we would do what's best for the people, but my brother needs a job. Let's give it to him. I have an architect buddy who will give me a kickback. Now, he doesn't know what he's doing, and so hundreds of thousands of people are going to be running into this city bureaucracy that was designed by idiots. But, hey, I'll be good at the barbecue at the family. This is a direct cause of violence and social unrest. And it's why it's such a sacred dialogue, what's happening here. The examination of the contract and the code. Is this really what's in the interest of my homeless friend down the street? Is this really what's my neighbor's marriage needs to get an escalated point in interest rates and this and that and the other? Well, they could easily let out the basement, but the local housing authority says that that's not habitable. Why? Well, it didn't get approved by this, that, da. Okay, so how long would that take? Well, 2-3 years plus a $50,000 fine. Well, when you're poor and you're trying to rent out the room, is that really what you need, a $50,000 several-year delay? Is that in these people's interest? And so this is the tension. This is the tension from the person on the street in this contract, where it's moved beyond voluntary. Initially, we'd like to govern you. Anyone up for that? Do you want us to govern you? Well, what would you do? Well, we would do this and this. Okay, we'll give you a shot. You see, now we put people in jail if they don't sign their side of the contract. It's a little bit more, it's a little bit more shaky. How, do we put Trump in jail because he's cheated on $50 million of taxes in the state of New York? Or is it just because he's either has a lot of money or is in power that nothing happens? See, this template, this contract is playing out moment by moment, area by area. And it's in that context that I want to look at what's happening here at HUD. Because the national government exists on the promise to create more well-being than suffering as a result of its existence. And to be fair, as incompetent, as often absurd, as often illegal, as government is, it's, I think, a reasonable case to say that Americans are better off that there is a government versus that there is no government. The level of self-absorption in, my neighborhood alone would be, would roads ever get built, And so I think that there's a reasonable case that government is better than no government. So what we're really looking about is the continuum of government. Because there are also specific areas where if there was no government, people would be alive today and they're dying, they're sick, because government exists. And this is the violation of the contract. This is the essence of evil When something good is taken in trust and used to harm the people it was taken from. When people's innocence, when their passion, when their love, when their money, and their hard work is taken in trust that good work will be done in the primary interest of the well-being of the people from which it was taken. And that money and that power and that trust is turned on the people to kill them, to insult them, to humiliate them, to damage their well-being. That's evil at its core. When something good and living, and trust is necessary for every living culture, when something good and living is turned on the people who offered it, and you end up inviting as the Incas did, their Spanish betrayers, inviting them in as guests, only to be slaughtered without mercy. When you invite the sociopathic element of government in and are ruthlessly betrayed to manage personal, agendas and interests of the individuals involved, that's evil. It's evil when it happens intentionally. That's conscious evil. And it's evil when it happens unconsciously. When you can do the math and say, if this law wasn't in place, this person who paid their taxes would be alive. They didn't do anything wrong. Their government did something wrong. If you look at Nixon's betrayal around the drug laws, there's never been any question in the data that marijuana kills even 1/10 of the people killed by alcohol. There's never been any question that it's good for the American taxpayer to lock someone caught smoking weed up for 5, 10, 20 years at $50,000 to $80,000 a year. There's never been any doubt as to whose interest that's in. And yet, as one of Nixon's aides talked about, he said, we knew these were harmless substances, not the opioids. I'm talking about marijuana as a Schedule I drug. LSD as a Schedule I drug. Mushrooms. DMT, endogenous in the human brain, illegal. Used for thousands of years, taken out of circulation for political purposes. We couldn't get them because they were black, said Nixon's aide. We couldn't get them because they were women and feminists. We couldn't get them because they were pacifists. But a lot of them were exploring LSD or marijuana. A lot of them had insights around a mushroom, and so we bribed the scientists to mislabel the science and say there's no redeeming value. We ignored the data because that let us interrupt and traumatize our political enemies. And we were able to arrest them and terrorize our political enemies and reduce the pressure on our policies. That's evil. When you betray the trust, the science, and use the gift of that monopoly on violence to actually murder your own people, directly and indirectly, because murder exists on a probability field. At the extreme edge of that probability field You have the fact that, interest rates, as Volcker will point out, Paul Volcker mediated the inflation in the 80s, the request of Jimmy Carter. We've got to get a handle on inflation. And he didn't think it would, interest rates would go up to 20%. But they did. And it created unemployment. And unemployment leads to domestic violence. And a certain amount of domestic violence leads to divorce. And people die sooner when they're divorced. Men do. There's an integrated system, and at each point, each variable affects the quality of life within the population, directly and indirectly. And it's the indirect things that are often most insidious and most dangerous. Because if a variable actually does lead to increased death, and greater pollution, and greater disease and PTSD, but it is delinked mentally as being unassociated, then something that has a horrendous cost is allowed to exist as part of an equation where its true cost is not calculated. Now, if we did that in business, they'd be bankrupt. If my accountant lied to me and said that, buy from this company every time you buy a pair of boots, it's only $10. But he didn't tell me that every fifth pair of boots from that company ends up exploding and killing someone, leading to a lawsuit every 5 times that is going to bankrupt me. Well, then the fact that it saves $2 doesn't, it's actually the worst decision I've ever made. You've got to have correlated data before you can behave intelligently. So, out of the promise of bringing well-being with public money and public trust comes HUD, a more specialized entity on housing and safety of Americans. And we're a scientifically oriented culture. And so the algorithm we use is what's the data about how to create the most safety and well-being in housing. And an intelligent use of that trust and money will be to do the things that create more safety and more housing per dollar invested than any other thing available, using the data. That's what we're referencing, a scientific paradigm. The efficiency of creating well-being through safety and housing, leading to protocols that should be evidence-based on how to do that. Now, right off the bat, on some level, we have to acknowledge a national failure. Because I can fly over to Thailand, and in 20 hours, I'm living in a country where I don't see homelessness. But I also don't see a HUD. And I don't see the extensive housing regulations that I see in the United States. What I see are people allowed to do whatever they want on their own land as long as it's not above a certain height. And lo and behold, no one in Thailand feels like sleeping out in the rain. So they don't. They get a little bamboo, a little wood, they put tin roofing on it, and $500 later they've got a room that they built themselves with no permit, no engineering, does the job better than the 1,000 homeless people wandering around the 5th wealthiest county in the United States where I live. See, none of them are allowed to build a little bamboo hut, a tin hut. They're not allowed. They're actively hunted by the police. So, homelessness with vast billions of dollars, homed for free and no government interference. In other words, the Thai government didn't promise, give us X more money, etc., and we will see that you're all safely housed and in an economy that da-da-da-da-da. You'll be housed. You'll be better off. You'll be better off than those third world countries. You'll be an American. Well, that's great for those of us who have houses. But there are millions of Americans who do not have safe legal housing. There are not millions of Thais. So we've got systemic failure just on the evidence. If we're going to look at evidence, everyone is housed, no government interference. Millions of people are not housed, massive government interference. Everyone is housed for free, no taxes. Thais pay very little taxes. And then you look at the happiness. Well, you just interview 100 Thai people. They will be happier than 100 Americans in a random sampling. I do it every time I go over there. So we're failing as a culture. We're failing as a country. Now, the Thais are not a science-based culture. We are. So we have to look at the data. That includes Thailand. You can go over to Denmark and find the same thing in a scientific paradigm. They spend tons of money, and I can't find the Danish person to interview who doesn't like their country, isn't happy with their job situation, isn't college educated, doesn't have free health care. I can't find them. It's incredible. I can find the Americans. So we've got these two extremes. Well, the evidence suggests we're doing it wrong. And the biggest concern I have is the dishonesty by corrupting the scientific method. Mathematics works as long as you're honest. If you cook the books, it doesn't work. So we have scientific protocols, which means measuring. That's what we're supposed to do as scientists. Measuring how much well-being gets created by this protocol and versus that protocol. Well, why not start with the country? Why not do a clear analysis, interview 1,000 Thai people, interview 1,000 American homeless, interview 1,000 Danish people, and look at the differences and own that the Danes and the Thais are not controlling our policies. So we need to adopt and promote practices that work based on data, not on dogma, and not on fear. So there's a psychological element that ties in with both, the solution that I want to talk about, but also looks at, these are variables that are in play. That data from top achievers, whether it's leading Fortune 500 company owners, read a book like In Search of Excellence, old but still relevant, Good to Great. That if we study success in America, in an area we are successful, we are very successful in a number of business sectors. So, we're very unsuccessful in a number of governmental sectors. We're very successful in a number of business sectors. So you want to learn from success. What gets measured improves. Any psychologist that works with goals, I started achieving goals when I was 14. yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily goals, my system, accelerates, and I've done years with goals and years without goals, accelerates accomplishment by 400%. What gets measured improves. And the faster the feedback loop and the more consistent the feedback loop, the more it improves. The data supports this. And it's really important that you have a position again around something like this based on data. It's like, I don't know. Set goals. Yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily, and measure the difference so that you can take a position, because the worst thing imaginable is, half the money of the country goes to government and people really don't know what the data supports. And that money gets wasted or makes things worse rather than leads to rapid improvement. So what gets measured improves. Competition improves performance. If you want to be a great tennis player, you've got to compete with someone at your level. Period. You are never going to be a great tennis player playing against someone who doesn't know how to play tennis. 1, your game may get worse. 2, you need to play with someone who challenges you to grow and do more. Compete is from the Latin to draw out the best. Competition improves performance. That's why, no one's going to diet for 6 weeks, etc., to stand alone in a room hitting against a wall. But with the witnessing of people who will honor excellence, witnessing, that's part of what brings out the best. With witnessing and with risk and uncertainty, where you have to be your best or you won't win, it brings out the best. Data improves effectiveness. You look at and we have areas in the United States, like vast arenas of government that are completely dysfunctional. No CEO would be happy, with those results. But we have other areas like, winning sports teams, and you look at them, the coaches that do the very best, they've brought in pattern recognition, close cameras, and what they do is they go over the data in nuance by nuance bit. Here's how you can improve your curves. The worst part of your game is this. You've got to know that, or you can't improve. And you've got to have data before you can know that, which means that having data in a format that is usable is the key to excellence at every level of your game. The key to excellence is having data. Data improves effectiveness. Personal trumps transpersonal. Well, we see this in the dance with Mr. Huffman, a client of mine, his wife, a client of mine, and the homeless. Everyone, particularly in the United States, is in a trauma-based rat race. Terror of losing. Terror of being named a loser. Got to keep elected, got to do this, got to do this. Anything goes. It's this constant juggling. Now, this is not the case in Thailand, and it's not the case in Denmark again, because it's a less trauma-based culture. But statistically speaking, you find an incredible amount of self-absorption in the United States because we punish our losers, we celebrate our winners, we don't like thinking and breaking it down all that much. And the cost of losing is high. Isolation, sexless, judged, unimportant to anyone who's focused on money, because if you don't have money in this culture, there is an incredible pattern of dismissing the humanity. So that's, what creates this. But within this, the reality of the United States is personal trumps transpersonal. Well, helping the homeless is transpersonal. They're not your homeless. They're not your problem. That we love to say that it's not my problem in this country, so it's not my problem. So why should I be focused? So no interest there. As soon as I start bringing witnessing to the Huffman family, you understand, I'm not going to keep any of this private or whatever. I don't care about my business relationship with you. I care about homeless people in my town. Of course, I care. They're good clients. But as soon as they understand that, the attitude shifts overnight. Because now the issue has become personal. How they look is now determined by my behavior. And as soon as that shift is made from transpersonal, the archetypal townsperson, people who are dying in our town, that are out there, over there, now becomes personal. We see literally hundreds of % of difference in behavior overnight. Hundreds of %, voluntary. Suddenly there's, I'm so sorry, and I shouldn't have, and I was just distracted, and da. Huge mountains move because it's now personal. Personal trumps transpersonal. Now, if this is the bit that I want HUD to honor. This is a point of data that affects hundreds of % of HUD's effectiveness of our public money. Personal trumps transpersonal. Now, what that means is that as soon as the homeless people in our town have something to do with me as I see it, there are hundreds of % more energy available to do something about it. Now, this is also a role that HUD can play. If you want our funding, you've got to be visible. And visible does not mean you get out a calculator, get into an email exchange, and over the next 6 weeks drag out bits of information from your local bureaucracy, as I've experienced making a documentary about homelessness. It doesn't mean that. It means having instant access to who's shaping what decisions and where we are now in our town, and where, to reference competition, where are we compared to the next town? And where are we compared to Utah, where, strangely enough, with half the income and half the tech resources, they actually care about their people? Where are we? Democracy needs an informed public, or democracy becomes toxic. As soon as you have an uninformed public voting because special interests who have no interest in them being informed are manipulating their fears, guilts, and shames to get them to do the very wrong thing for their own well-being in order to support the public interest, you might as well have a benign dictatorship as far as the human well-being of the country is concerned. A benign, informed dictatorship creates significantly more well-being than an uninformed democracy. We see that in China right now. There's a lot more benign dictatorship in China, and they get stuff done. So you have uninformed, manipulatable democracy. In the Philippines, it's even worse. They actually pay, the candidates go around to the poor villages, and it's a terribly run country, thanks to our and Spanish influence, but they go around and who wins is the one who pays the most cash for the votes. And so you promise your vote, they'll give you 500 pesos. Now, how are you going to get that money? Through corruption. Your salaries don't support it. So how are these politicians magically coming up with enough money to pay 500 pesos per person for each vote? Oh, no, give it to us. It will pay 600 pesos. Massive corruption. So what's the result? Systemic child abuse, ignorance, low education, lack of road, massive corruption. It's one of the worst run countries I've visited. And the people are terrific. The people have so much potential with good government. Now, Thailand is way better run in many ways. The military dictatorship, the old king, was really loved for what he did for his people. But you have uninformed democracies at the bottom. Then you have benign dictatorships. And then you have informed democracy. And if an informed democracy outperforms a benign dictatorship because you've got decentralized power and it's being used even more intelligently because it's used benignly. You've got to inform the public, or you are very likely to be worse off as a public than a benign dictatorship. Now, an informed public, particularly one in a rat race like ours, is equivalent to the ease at which information is accessed. Meaning, if I can take 5-10 minutes and see what's going on in my city around homelessness, then I'm informed. If not, I'm uninformed. I mean, I'm 43 years old, and I have never learned a single useful thing about homelessness or in my city in my entire life until I decided to make a documentary, which I'm making right now. Everything that I'm learning is because I'm willing, for the purpose of a documentary, to plow through shit after shit after shit to get these little nuggets of information that are useful. And there is so much resistance. Oh, we don't want this on camera. Oh, we can't talk about that. Oh, we don't know this. Or talk to me in a month about that. I can't even get the budget for the salary of my local official. He says, well, we'll be doing next year's budget in a few months. I said, I didn't ask for next year's budget. I'm asking how much do you get paid this month? This month, did you take home a check? Silence. Silence. I mean, this is the protocol. Mask the information so that you have an uninformed public that doesn't hold an uninformed government accountable for its promise that we're going to take all this money and we're not going to kill you with it. We're going to help you with it. You've got to have an informed public, which equals the ease of information. The difference between being able to access information in 5 minutes and an hour is the difference between an informed and an uninformed public. I'm 5 hours into trying to get information that I don't have. 5 hours. Multiple emails to multiple sources. Blockaded interviews here and there and here and here. Broken website links. I can't get the information. We don't have an ignorant public because Americans are stupid on principle, on a genetic basis. We have the same genetics as the people you'll interview in Denmark who know a great deal more than we do. Why? It's the ease of information. Now, this is a really key part because it's cheap. It's cheaper to make this information available than it is to hide it in all these arcane places. Number one, it's cheaper. It's more intelligent. It's more accountable. Ease of information. So where HUD fails me and the public, I cannot access a list of best practices based on global statistics or national statistics. These are the best practices. And when I say I can't access them, well, I'm sure there'll be someone that raises a hand. No, if you go to this site and click here and go there. I can't access that. It's not showing up in my world. It hasn't shown up in any of my interviews. William Snow at HUD didn't say, by the way, here's a list of best practices at this link. I can't access it. Well, I'm actually trying to do a documentary. What does that say for anyone else's ability? You can't access the best practices based on data? It's a joke. I cannot access a list of best practices. I cannot find a list of towns that have eliminated homelessness. Now, is there a town anywhere in America that has eliminated homelessness? Where is it? What did they do? What did they not do? I can't find that. I cannot find out what my town is doing. When you email the housing director for homelessness, the homeless coordinator, and say, hello, Andrew Henning of the city of San Rafael, can you show me your plan? What is it? How much money are you going to spend to do what? What's your projected outcome? And you get silence. Let's answer another question, and another question, and another question. How many times do we have to ask the question? And then finally, we're working on that. We'll have it done in the proverbial few months. You listen to the city meeting. Someone's candid enough on the video to say, we've really been stalling this for 20 years. And we're going to have it done in a few months. I cannot find what my town is doing. I can't read case histories of the worst and best towns of America. Here's the top 10 towns in terms of eliminating and ending homelessness. Why are they the best towns? Well, you've got to break down the metrics. Well, first of all, everyone's happy about it. There's not anyone protesting that we ended homelessness. I mean, that wouldn't be a terribly good success story. Bring back the homeless. Where have our homeless gone? How dare we spend public money to house the homeless? Bring them back, kill them. Well, that wouldn't be a great success story, but presumably there's a town or two somewhere in the country who's solved it and everyone's happy with it. What did they do? I can't find that. Finally, it's dragging this stuff out. I wrote to the Utah director. 2 months later, her daughter writes back and says, sorry, he has cancer, he's dying. Okay, anyone else I can talk to? How many more months do I have to wait for that reply? I can't find the information. I can't read case histories of the worst and best towns. I cannot lobby based directly on data. I can't go to my city and say, look, Mill Valley, they've got half the amount of homelessness that you have. And these are the policies they have. And you have this amount. And you don't have these policies. Do you have another reason, do you have any basis to not use that data? I can't do that. Why not? Because it's not presented. Homelessness is not ending. It's getting worse. Now, Ray Dalio is someone that HUD and any government agency should be paying attention to. He's a consultant for the Federal Reserve. for governments around the world about the large cycles, one of the biggest which is what's called the long-term debt cycle. And the long-term debt cycle, which can take 20 to 70 years or so, is a process in which a populace becomes more and more debt-laden to a point where the money has to tighten because otherwise the system will collapse. That triggers recession and increased interest rates. And you either go into, a deep depression or, there's a whole host of things that can happen. But the bottom line is you've got to reinvest at those times and come back to financial vitality. But you do it, in a time of tremendous stress and economic scarcity. It's called the long-term debt cycle. Well, we're heading for one right now. Now, in a town like mine, where rents have gone up 30% in the last few years, oh, sure, I can pay it. I'm a business owner. I talk with construction workers where everyone drives in because they can't afford a house in the place they're working. Now, the long-term debt cycle, as it hits this tightening phase, incomes stay stagnant or go down. People lose their job, but housing costs don't go down. So you have more homeless people. The next 10 years, from my understanding of reading books and looking at this, and top leaders, pay a lot of attention to this data because it's, you have this tension between politics and physics. Mathematics doesn't lie. Politics, sometimes, it's a mixed bag. You don't get to be the number one most profitable hedge fund investor for decades believing lies, because the data doesn't care about your lies. If you say things are going to get great because you're ignoring reality, they don't get great just because you said they would. They only get great if the underlying fundamentals change. And winners know this because they don't want to be lied to. They want the information, often very painful and difficult, that will stop them losing all their money. Well, Ray Dalio, after studying this more than even Buffett, as far as I can tell, believes we're heading for economic tightening. That means more homelessness in the next 10 years. Well, we've got more than I've ever seen before in my town. And it's the fifth wealthiest county in the United States based on median income. So what's that going to say to other places? It means we need to respond in the hundreds of percent range, meaning we have to create new protocols and best practices that are hundreds of percent better than the present practices, or we are murdering American people. Now, what I'm interested in studying are ways that this can be done for free or that save every person's money. And what I'm outlining here is a way that HUD can do this. I can do it for $5,000. State and local government could probably do it for $100,000 based on the rule of 10. Your government is going to waste 10 times more money doing anything intelligent than you would. Well, the federal government is generally subject to the law of 20. The state government can drive up the cost 10 times. Well, no problem. The federal government will drive it up 20 times. Okay, so what I can do for $5,000, this idea, HUD should be able to do for $200,000. It's still a stunning idea in terms of the billions that it can leverage. But let's not get too grandiose. How about saving a few million with a $200,000 investment? So I'll outline that idea, and I'd like to get a response based on data of a this or better. We're going to do this, or we're going to do something better that solves these very real problems. That I'm an uninformed documentary maker, let alone an uninformed member of the voting public. Okay, here's what I want as a documentarian, as a city official, as a police officer, as a citizen, as a local nonprofit in my town. Here's what I want from HUD to be an informed citizen. I'll tell you how to get there in terms of what's a very easy approach in a bit of time. My town homepage. You know, that's what I go. City of San Rafael, homelessness, I'll dig in and try and find some stuff. My hometown. I don't care what it's called, but let's just say a HUD icon on the bottom or somewhere located on the home page of my town. I want it to have a 0 to 100 score. And for more information, click. Now, I then want to be able to read this page here. Now, this icon can have 3 different colors: a gold, a bronze, and a black, whatever it is. An F, a gold, a bronze, or an F. Everyone is safely housed is a gold award. I don't care how you get there. That's a town that's behaving as towns should. Things are getting better, okay, a silver. Things are getting worse, meaning this year things are worse for our homeless than last year. And you can make as many gradients as you want, but I think 3 is a pretty simple, manageable number. And I don't think it's too difficult to define better or worse. Let's start with more people per 1,000 people are housed this year than were last year in safe legal housing. Is that too complicated? Right now the calculations in my county are 4.77 people are homeless per 1,000. Well, if next year that goes to 5.77 people are homeless per 1,000, I'd say that's getting worse. And if it goes down to 3 people are homeless per 1,000, I'd call that a good, 20, 40% improvement. So that's what I want here. But that's, of course, not nearly enough. What I want is to read the 100 most relevant data points about my town. And I want HUD to be presenting best practices in a synthesizing capacity based on the best data available. These are the towns that don't have homelessness. Here's what they're doing and not doing. Anyone else is free to, the key thing is transparency of data. No one is being required to do anything other than be transparent. So my sense of the easiest way to get this adopted in most towns across America is simply that if you want to receive public money, you as a city have got to fill out this form. You can fill it out by saying, we're not going to fill out this form. That's an option. And I, as a citizen, can click, and when I see that my city has not filled out a single form, meaning they've said, we're not going to tell you this, we're not going to tell you this. They've got to make a statement, basically, a statement of resistance. We're hiding information. We don't know. So we can say we don't know. And I can look at the history of my city's willful ignorance over the last 20 years and said, gee, well, I'm in a city of profound willful ignorance that's killing its people because it can't answer the most basic question. Well, that provides a basis for me to lobby. I don't want to live in a city that's that dumb. Well, I don't think most people would either. And so what it means is there's a consequence to year after year saying, I'm not going to answer this question. We're our own city and we're not going to tell anyone what we don't feel like telling anyone. Okay, that's a very common attitude in local government. But there's a consequence. It hurts people when a local government has that attitude. And it's fair to understand the ripple effect of a government like that. And it's fair to elect other local townspeople who might have a more transparent attitude. So I'm not suggesting that HUD mandate that governments answer a certain way to receive funding, but that they answer every single one of these questions with, here is the answer, and they can go in as much detail as they want. We're doing this, and then you have notes. This is why we had a meeting about this and this and this and this. Here's a link to our video of our meeting. Okay, fine. That's why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, next question. Now, there's two parts of this point that we have. You have the result, which is how many homeless people there are per thousand. And you have, how many of those, are you adding more? Are you housing more of those each month? Are you creating more? What's your data gathering source? Are they happy? Are they giving surveys? You have a results-based form. And if you'll take this seriously, I will propose a form as a starting point. Meaning, if the best towns doing a good job around the country or the best countries in the world say this isn't a useful form, change it like this and like this. Fine. Change it. There's nothing holding this static. It's just bringing 100 points of data that are oblique as hell and making them available to the people who need the information in order to vote intelligently. So I want results, 3 to 7 results that seem most relevant. And then I want best practices. And I don't want them just randomly sorted. I want the towns and the cities who have ended homelessness to nominate the best practices. And I want everyone to be able to comment and people to see those comments. But that these are emerging out of data. And I want this to be a transparent dialogue where it's not really HUD saying this is our policy. It's HUD revealing the discourse between competence and incompetence across the country, revealing it, and ensuring that it is revealed in as much detail as someone wants to dig. I can just see, okay, a typical best practice would be to have a written plan. We don't have one, okay? I can then look into why don't you have one? Are you preparing one? Will you have one in 6 months? Why don't you have a written plan? Seems intelligent to me. City official, why don't you have a written plan? Well, I think it's a good idea. I'd like to see what it is. Okay, thank you. You're a local citizen. We don't have a written plan. We don't have an emergency shelter in the event of a storm. Or we do. Here it is, and this is where you go. And this is what's currently capable of handling 200 people. We estimate there may be 400 people, so it's not adequate to, okay, well, local city, I'd like to donate something for the emergency shelter. I'd like 10 people to be able to come to my house. Okay, you're added to the emergency shelter protocol, You need to take this training and this. Now I can engage with my city. What about flu shots? And this gets back to the data. I want data easily available on this link. Now, HUD can add as many things as it wants to this data stream, but here's some of the stuff that I want. I want a link of the top American towns. And HUD doesn't have to pick them. This form can pick them. We've eliminated homelessness. We had 10 people per 1,000 before. Now we have none. We did it in 3 years. We did it for $10,000 a person. Wow. You can create an algorithm where towns like that get put up to the top. And you can describe why you built that algorithm. I mean, everyone knows there's not an unlimited amount of money, so we value people who save money. Everyone knows that you can take 20 years to solve a problem, or you can do it in 6 months. We value people who do it faster. Everyone knows that you can make people very unhappy and and you can make people feel treated with dignity and all that. And we value people in a survey where most of the homeless say they liked the way they were treated. So you're up at the top by filling out this form, and so you're up at the top. Top American towns for ending homelessness. I want to know what they look like. I want to know how they're governed, I want to read their pages. So I click on it, I see their pages as I'm going through, they had this meeting, this is what their town meeting looked like on their video. This was like, wow. I'm going to send that to my city. Well, what's the benefit of that? Well, they actually get to see what a well-run town looks like. They actually get to see that mayor got elected the next year and the next, as opposed to being voted out and worried about corruption. So, nonprofit comments. I want to go click that. I'll see a list of all the nonprofits in my area that tie into homelessness. Okay. Homeward Bound, what do they have to say about what we're doing and their role and anything they want to say? I want to know as a citizen. I want to know if they feel unfairly discriminated against, that they had this great idea that no one in the city will listen to. And I want to be able to vote on those comments. This is an important comment to me as a citizen. Homeless comments. Any homeless person can have an account, voluntary, and comment about what's going on. And I want to hear those comments in video, in comment, in anything. They get to sign into this. Now, ideas. I want, as a citizen, to be able to promote an idea like this. Here's my idea. Here's my video. This is why I think it'll work. Anyone else think it's a good idea? I want it to get upvoted, much like Cora does. How you can help. I want to be able to click here and 2 seconds later click how you can help, and I want a list of actions that need doing that I can look through and say, I could do that, I could do that, I could do that. Well, I'll help. The top 3 goals for the city and why they were chosen. What were all the goals nominated? Who proposed them all? Why did these 3 get selected? And what are they? That's incredibly valuable. What were all the goals that we have and that were put forth, and the reasons? And then these are the actual goals we're working on as a city, and here's how you can help. I want to click to our plan. What is our city's plan to end all homelessness? And I want my city's score down here. I want to be able to see, okay, add up all the data points, you get points for participation, you get points for, engagement, you get points for results, you get points for learning something. You get points for being more extensive in your data. Points, 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 up to 100 points. I want to know what they are. Then over here, I want to see the trajectory over time. I want to be able to do a different period of time and see the up and down. I want to see it in percentage, and I want to see it in a graph. I want the individual scores to have a percentage or flat line or graph, but I also want the total score. As a city, are we doing anything? Now, I think that this is the tool that takes the transpersonal and makes it personal. I think that this is the tool that a mayor has to actually approve the answers to every one of these 100 questions. Is the eureka moment that you, first of all, get a mayor actually asking these questions. Well, why don't we have this? Well, Mayor, you never asked for one. Well, I didn't know I was supposed to ask for one. Go do it. I want this point. What is our policy around, a shelter in the event of natural earthquake or something? Well, Mr. Mayor, you never asked for a policy, so we don't have one. Well, how long does it take to make a policy? Go look at towns over that are doing good. Look at the top 10 towns. Looks like they've got this policy. Copy and paste it. We'll have that policy. Stick it in there. Now, done. Let's get our points up. We've taken transpersonal and we've made it personal. We've taken ignorance and we've got data. We've made it engaging with the graphs over time. So there's continual focus on improvement, and you can get points. You improve your score 3 years in a row or more, and you get that point. We're busy, we're focused, yeah, but we're going to lose a point. We're not going to get that point, So you gamify it. Do whatever works. Now, as I say, a version of this is something I can pull off for $5,000. Volunteering all my time, of course. Just about anyone could pull it off for $100,000, and I'm sure the federal government could pull it off for $200,000 or $300,000. Once you do this for 5, 10, 20, 100 towns, when you leverage this out, towns can be asked to pay for it. Here's what you need before your town can receive any federal money. You have to fill out this form however you want, and you have to donate $30 for the cost of maintaining the database. That's it. Completely automated. They can add any media they want. Any of these people can add anything that they want, and the only time it gets involved is if there is a complaint of rigging. I want to report the fact that my city has said there's a plan, but I can't find any plan. I'm a homeless person and I got arrested. The protocol, let's have one of the metrics be good protocols. Here's what happens when someone in our town is homeless and they're sick. Well, we do this, then we do this, then we do this. Well, whatever it is, just having it written down, having a clear protocol is a step in the right direction. The odds of doing something intelligent go up if you have a written protocol. Well, as soon as you have a written protocol, it now brings accountability, because the homeless person reading that what was supposed to happen was I was supposed to be taken to the ER, my emergency treated, and then I was this. But what happened was while I was bleeding on the street, they looked at my money, they said this, that, and the other. They said they weren't going to do that. Then this ambulance said they weren't going to haul me because this, that, and the other. And then the hospital said I've got a brain damage because I wasn't brought to the hospital in time. That's what actually happened. Well, you don't have to verify that in order to give a homeless person the right to say it. Sure, it's up to them to proceed with a lawsuit or whatever if they want. But, if you're in a town and 30 homeless people are all talking about being frisked for money before going to the ER, and you go to the best American towns and you say, well, okay, well, that's not happening in any of these towns. Probably some of those 30 people actually have an issue, and I want something done about it. So, Mr. Mayor, I know you could give a shit about our homeless, and I know but I'm actually one of the people electing you, and I'd like you to do something about this. What will you do? And I add a comment, and I'd like a written reply on my matrix. Well, they can reply, they cannot reply. You see, HUD's not mandating that anyone do anything other than be transparent about what they're actually doing and not doing. That's it. And I think that anyone who believes in science and a scientific culture has got to understand that the foundation of that is accurate data, which the foundation of accurate data is transparency. And it's all in the details. It is the level of nuance that reveals the picture. Sure, you can get a 1-pixel TV image. It's just a very boring image. It turns on, it turns off. But when you got 4,000 pixels, you can have real-life transparency. When cities can create movies, when the homeless can create movies, when nonprofit can create movies, when you've got unlimited uploads of links to all this data, and you can explore as much of it as you want, and it's summarized in one simple score, 0 to 100. Or 2 scores, the results and the practices. You get a 30% score on results, you get a 0 score on practices. You get a 80% score on practices, a 2% score on results. That's also informative. This is the material out of which documentarians, sociologists, school children can study and make something real. This changes lives, and it costs pennies to maintain this database. Oh, the politics around it, I'm sure, can run into the millions. Special meetings, special reports. Oh, well, so-and-so doesn't want this happening because in this district, we know we can't have this. We won't give you any funding at HUD. If the politics can cost tens and tens of millions of dollars to actually help the American people know anything useful about what's going on in their own town. But that's evil. That's corrupt. That's going back to that archetypal form. We promise to use your money and your authority to act in your interest. And in fact, we're going to fuck you over, steal your money, create violence, create crime, create disease with your money, and then spend a fortune with lawyers and all that trying to mask it all from view. So we can be idiots with your money and hurt you, and you don't know what's going on. Well, of course that goes on. But I think it's HUD's responsibility to expose that. And this provides a window. Why not have a window into HUD as well, where the American people can learn what's being pressured and not pressured by what parts of government within HUD? Because I can't think of a single faction that answers the question, what is best for ending homelessness, that thinks this would harm that. I'm not coming up with anything. If you can, tell me. That's part of the dialogue. Who would this harm? Now, if my assistant can code this database in a month for $5,000, the national government can't pull it off for a few $100,000? I mean, give me a break. Ask for help. Ask for Google's help. Ask for Facebook's help. I don't care. Do it for free. Say, we'd like to have this sponsored by a data company. HUD in partnership with so-and-so. This is our contribution. Microsoft has just donated $500 million to end homelessness. How about spending, say, Microsoft, would you like to sponsor the national database of objectives showing the limits of science? And what to be our sponsor, you've got to devote some of your best programmers and best scientists, and that you've got to show all this and all this, and you've got the gig. That's what government is for, to honor companies. I mean, heaven knows Microsoft is guilty of enough crimes. Every single wasted minute of my day, they're they just damaged my last Skype interview with one of their creepy updates. But I mean, give them a chance to do something decent, to redeem themselves. So we've got a possibility that's a few votes away from being a reality. That, in my estimation, has somewhere between a 50 and a 500% benefit on the equation. That every mayor in this country answering 100 questions and saying, well, why don't we know the answer to this and that, and actually communicating the message that this is important and having it signed by the mayor. This is authorized by the mayor of every town and city. Bring it down to the local level where it can be solved. 50 to 500% impact with no additional federal money spent, with federal money saved in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And then it's over time. It's one-time thing. And anytime someone wants to fund a split analysis and produce a parallel form, you can just create a protocol where anyone can create a parallel form. They can then test it with 5 or 10 volunteers, and HUD can help them find the volunteers. And if that one, let's say my approach starts at a 50% improvement, and that one does 100% improvement, by all means, let the data speak. But give it a chance. That's what I want from my government, a science-based, give it a chance approach. Now, you've got all this information. I don't have the authority to implement her, or I would do it tomorrow. If that got me fired, I'd be fired. Because my job is to make sure that more American people are safely housed and to follow the data where it takes me. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing what you can take of this, how you can implement it. What would be a better approach? What specific problems? That's all information we need as a population. If you're hamstrung by laws that other politicians created that make you dysfunctional, that's information we need to know. Who made those laws? What are their agendas? This is what leads to an informed population. Thank you so much.